Watching HuffPost Live, I'm Nancy Red, and from politics to parenting, HuffPost's blogs run the gamut. And every day at HuffPost Live, we like to shine a spotlight on some of the hottest blogs on our site. Now, a lot of times, some of the most profound are also the most personal, and that's the case for Julie Maya Taylor. She's a mother and former social worker who penned this piece for the Huffington Post. It's titled, "The Chemo Took His Hair, but His Hat Made Him Brave." She joins me now to talk about that magical hat and her beautiful boy. Welcome, Julie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Well, as a mother myself, this piece is just beautiful. You have 3 sons. Tell us about them.
My oldest is 10 years old, and he's in 5th grade. And then my middle son just turned 9, and Andrew will be my youngest, will be turning 7 this month.
Now, you start your piece praying what you say is a silly prayer. Your son, who was 2 years old at the time, he was diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma, and you prayed that he would keep his fuzzy blonde hair and long lashes.
Right. Yes. Well, I say it was silly because I know that there were so many other things to be praying about, and his hair was, in reality, the least of the worries, but at the same time, it was still very painful to watch him lose it.
And unfortunately, that prayer didn't come true, but many others did. Now, for those who don't know what Ewing's sarcoma is, what was the process once your son was diagnosed?
Well, they found a tumor behind his eye, which was in his eye orbit, and that was a very rare place for them to find Ewing's. But what they had to do, because they couldn't reach it through his nose, which I guess is typical with facial tumors, they had to go through his forehead. So they had to cut a circle in his forehead and go in that way and remove it and then put the piece back and sew him back up. And then there are all sorts of tests to determine, how far the cancer had spread, and it was localized, so we were very lucky. And then the chemo had to start once he healed.
And when the chemo started, as the title of your piece does lend to, he lost his hair, but one day, wandering through Target, you found something that made things a little bit better. What did you find?
I found what at the time I just thought it was cute. It was a hat from How to Train Your Dragon, and it had the eyes, and you can see it there with the teeth of Toothless the dragon. And I didn't even know if he'd like it, but I put it on his head, and it kind of became a part of him. He went around roaring, and I think, and you can see there, he loved it, and I think it gave him a sense of power. He could roar and make people laugh. He could roar and make people scream, and he had fun with it.
And he always was very particular about the hat during this time when he had no hair, right?
He did. I mean, he would wear other hats. He had lots of hats. Lots of people gave us gifts of hats, and they were all beautiful, but this was his favorite because when he would check, because he didn't feel it wasn't legitimate if he roared, if he wasn't wearing this hat. So he would look, am I wearing the hat where I can roar? And then when he was, he would put it on, and then he'd go run across the playground and scream at the other boys, or he'd go roar at the nurses. So he just, he loved it. And it brought joy to me, too, because just watching him have fun with it.
Now, some could say that there's a difference in children, especially when we're talking about the difference between being self-conscious and being confident, strong, and in a way confirming your own identity. Holding blankets, a certain pair of sparkly shoes, and for your son, the dragon hat. I mean, as you said earlier, this really helped him. What a bizarre thing that just made such a difference during this difficult time. Do you think the hat had something to do with his positive and speedy recovery?
I think so. I think it was, I think it made him have a feeling of power. He was in so many situations where he was absolutely powerless. And he found a way to make people react to him, and the hat made it just so much easier for that. And, yes.
When did he stop wearing the hat?
He stopped pretty much... it took a while for his hair to grow back in, and we live in Arizona, so he still needed hat covering. But it was probably a month or two after he stopped the chemo, when his hair grew in.
Now, you end your piece with this. You say, Andrew lost every strand of hair and every last eyelash, but they all grew back. This year, he is attending first grade. I'm so thankful for the provision of this toothless, beautiful, dirty hat that stood in for his hair as a mighty and temporary substitute. And I continue to pray that he will never need that hat or any other ever again. So when he looks back at this time in his life, what does he think? Does he know what happened, or does he just think the time he had to wear the toothless hat?
You know what? I think it was a blessing that he was so young, because he really doesn't remember the horror that I remember. I mean, and it never was as scary to him. He does remember. He remembers the hat, but he really doesn't seem to remember the pain, and so that is a huge blessing.
And how is he now? How's our first grader? Does he ever want to put the toothless hat back on just for a little boost of confidence?
He doesn't, but it's been 4 years. But he has other ways of. He still loves to have fun. You can see him there in that picture. He loves to make people laugh still, even without a hat.
Well, do you have any other words of advice for people who might be going through this in their own households?
I guess my heart goes out to everybody. Has a different way of handling it, and for me, I prayed a lot, just as a sort of to provide some peace. And I don't know. I know everybody needs to handle it in their own way, because we're all different. But
well, Julie, we're so grateful that you were able to join us and for writing this incredible piece.
Thank you for having me.
Now, anyone who wants to read her piece, please view our resource well below this video screen, and stay tuned, because the conversation always continues here at HuffPost Live.